Hello and welcome to the Fintech Finance Virtual Arena. I'm Doug Mackenzie, the host of today's session. And today we're all going to be talking about Onze, a bank based in Catalonia, or should I say a financial hub. So joining me today is my guest, James Sene. James, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Absolutely amazing. James, for our viewers who might not be aware, could you give us a bit of background to yourself and 11 Onze, please?
Well, as you just said, my name is James Sene. I'm from Senegal. Been living for 30 years now in Barcelona. From where, for the last 25 years, I've been involved in developing, cutting-edge technology around e-commerce, internet, business, but mainly focus in entertainment and media industry. For instance, I run, the modernization of FC Barcelona Football Club, a digital business, created the first website, e-commerce platform, television. I founded a bwin in Mexico like 15 years ago. It's in the betting industry, and funded my own company on mobile betting on a C2C model all around the world. So from here, I've been working around the world in this area. And I think that now Onze is the kind of combination of all these experience over 25 years into one, and aiming at helping the community in which I've developed myself. So that's where we start.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, it also sounds like you've been working around the clock, to be honest. You don't stop. So, well, with that in mind, keeping to time then, I've got to ask, how did you come up with the name?
Well, Onze, as it is a community that we're aiming at developing in Catalonia and I would say the Catalan regions. Onze has a different, meanings in the Catalan culture. The Onze means 11 actually. The 11th of September is I would say the national day. And the 11th of August is a national anthem for one of the I would say the most prominent persons in Catalonia. We have a different attachment to this number, and it kind of has its significance for us. So that's why we chose Onze. And also, it was a different way to talk about what we wanted to talk about, financial, business industry with no name, just a number, because at the end of the day, it's a number game,
Yeah, and I mean, just from hearing that, and obviously from your past experiences as well, working with Barcelona FC, you really are such a hub of the kind of Catalonian community, and I think Onze also displays those traits as well. So for our audience who might not be aware, can you give us a bit of background to, if we look very top down, the financial ecosystem in Catalonia as opposed to maybe Castile?
Yeah, well, basically you have to understand that Catalonia being more or less just Catalonia, because if you extend it to the Països Catalans, it's even more, but just Catalonia represents 22% of the Spanish GDP with 15% of the population. So it's a pretty, active and productive, area of the country. And so far, there's a tradition in Catalonia to create these kind of associations around everything, including banking. And in the past, they used to have what they call La Caixa, which were small community kind of banks. And over the last, since 2008, they have been disappearing, being absorbed by big banks that are more like international one or Spanish based one. And right now we are in a situation where we only have three options, basically main options to work with. And therefore this is more complex because, as you might know, it's much more easy for them these three to back together and kind of impose their conditions upon the population if there's no other options. So that's where we come in, to try to offer a different perspective, a different option for people to have access to money, finance in a quicker, faster way. Yeah.
I think that's so critical, and we are seeing that financial services can't be this kind of huge, ambiguous kind of offering, people now have a demand for actual tailored services like they would have in any other industry. We're starting to see finance finally start to realize that. Now, before we dive deeper into actual Onza's offering and product system, still can explore that ecosystem that you operate in. And I'm interested, did it change after the 2017 referendum, and how does Onza kind of play that role, being that community hub in finance post 2017?
Well, it's a very good question, because actually that's the on-site of Onza ID. On 2017, after the referendum, actually the main banks in Catalonia left the region. You have to for Valencia or Madrid or the regions, which means that basically they took people, interest, money, effort over years and decades away, because just for whatever reason, there was kind of a decision to be made, and they were not involved, and they did that. So for the community, it was a real shock. I think the realization came into, I think, the public domain, that actually these banks that we thought they were here for us were only here for themselves. And I think that's a shift in the mindset, where we said, okay, we need a financial institution that can cover us, that can be here whatever we decide, because it's none of our business, from a banking perspective, to be mixed within the political decisions. It's just people's money, people's savings, and people's lives. So you should not take that away because they decide to do one thing or another. So that's where we come from. We're not about one decision or another. We want to give people the freedom of choice and the freedom of at least being able to control their destiny, their money, their work in a way that it doesn't depend on some other entities that have shown that they're not here for them. Yeah.
Now, I think that's really, from my research, it all tumbles down from there. Again, if we still stay with that kind of top-down focus before we continue on with how you can actually help people on the ground. I'm interested, does that mean that having that localized focus that's so embedded into kind of the Catalonian kind of spirit, has that provided you with a different type of investor, one that's actually looking closer to an organization or an institution that can help them and their people out going forward, and not just going to bugger off with changes to geopolitics?
Absolutely, and that's one of the specificities of the idea of Onza, because you can see it as a 2.0 of what community banking is. This is very important. Aside of having a financial institution that will stay here, we also want it to be so embedded into the community that it would not have any option. So the best way to do that was to open up the shareholding structure to as many possible citizens or people living in Catalonia. And that's why we tried to avoid big names, big company, even big corporation. And we started with a few investors. Right now, more than 148. They are basically middle, small size companies, just normal current people, bringing whatever they have. We pack it together, and that's how we're financing ourselves. And it's a fundamental, because we own the structure, we own Onza, and therefore that's the best way to secure it.
That's incredible. Now, speaking of that, then, before we go further with it, then, what is Onza's mission? We've kind of touched on that community aspect, but to you, what is the biggest kind of mission behind it?
Well, the biggest mission, to summarize it, is we're here to bring financial wealth and stability to the Catalan population. That's our goal. Okay, that's why we're here. Because ultimately we think that, and everybody knows that, money is a centerpiece of everybody's life, and right now we have zero control, zero knowledge about money, and zero control about our own money. And it's necessary, before you choose anything, to have a bit of financial stability, and so that you can even learn and have the peace of mind to take certain decisions. Right now, We don't have that. So from a pure, I would say, objective standpoint, we want to give people peace of mind when it comes to their personal finance, and meaning family, meaning businesses, meaning small businesses. We're here for that.
Incredible. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head. To me as well, fintech really should be about opening up finance. But one thing, opening up financial services is one thing, but then being able to give people that kind of peace of mind by enabling an overview and an element of confidence in where the money's going, or how they can look after it. It saves people. It saves people's mental health, their lives. And one thing you realize from payments and being in the payments industry, everything comes back to a payment, and everything comes back to banking, whether it be buying a car, buying a house, or just buying sandwiches. You always need a bank, and to be able to have visibility of your finances is so critical. Now, we've seen, and you've talked about maybe the larger institutions fleeing Catalonia for Valencia and Bilbao. Like, I'm interested, do you think these large institutions are actually almost on the back foot when it comes to innovation, especially when they compare themselves to ONZA, because they can't use open banking, and how will they ever be able to use open banking as effectively as an organization like ONZA?
Well, I think it's a very, very interesting question, but there's many questions within these questions. I think that's actually, you nailed it. I think you nailed it, because it's a conceptual thing. First of all, not just big institution, we're seeing the same mistake made by some new fintech organization, because at the end of the day, trying to emulate, I would say, the current, big institution, they just taking the same path. They're just doing the same thing, but in a more efficient way. But at the end of the day, these new fintechs are here to provide wealth to a few people, rather than the many. It's for the few and not for the many. And that's for us, that's the problem, because if you want to open up, the financial industry, you have to completely open it up, and you do not have to have someone holding so much power over the mass. And we have very interesting, we're documenting that, because through our journey, we've seen some of these fintech industry behaving even worse than the big institution, and we will report on that, because it's part of our disclosure about transparency, so people know what we're talking about. It's not because you put fintech in front that you're nice and cool. You should have to demonstrate what you say. So that's the first part. The second is that from I would say, we are living in a change of paradigm. The mentality of banking industry is failing, because they still behaving in a fencing mode. So far you had a few controlling the money and delivering it as they want, when they wanted it, to people, and getting paid for that. Right now, as you just mentioned, open banking opens everything up. It's like having bankers for me are like doorkeepers in nightclubs, who trying to have a business where now we're talking about open air festivals, and there's no door to keep. It's more about organizing the event. So that's what we do. So from that standpoint, they are reluctant to actually adopt open banking, because it goes against the fundamental thinking behind their business model, because it's all about keeping for a few part control, etc., while we actually in a total, I would say, universal shift when it comes to the modus operandi of people. You can see it now. All businesses around sharing are successful. Facebook, Twitter, we're sharing our sentiment, our content. Airbnb, we're sharing our houses. Uber, we share our cars. We're in the sharing, now, time. So trying to be in a fencing mode will never work, because it has changed and will not go back. So I think that's the main issue they have. It's not about them being able to buy the technology, adapt. It's about their mindset doesn't fit, going out.
That's interesting. And I think institutions of that size maybe can't change mindset as quickly as just buying a new technology. And yeah, it's interesting, for 200 years they've been powering away risk, and now they're having to invite it in almost. Now, as you mentioned as well in the first part of your answer, some of the challenger banks are also guilty of this. Maybe, it's not just, we don't want to just chuck the old school institutions under the bus. There have been others that have had similar issues. Now, how does Onza go beyond the traditional kind of, I don't want to say traditional, how does Onza go beyond the typical challenger bank?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, as I said before, first of all, in challenger bank, you have two terms. You have bank. We don't consider ourselves as a bank. That's the first point, because of the philosophy behind it is about sharing. We see Onza more as a financial hub. It's all about allowing interaction and exchange of goods and services and money in a fast and efficient way. So from that standpoint, we're not a bank. We don't want a name. We don't want to be looked as a bank, because we think they are finished. And the new world, as you've mentioned, open banking is about, being a hub, being a facilitator. So that's the first part. The main difference is we see ourselves as a hub. We don't want to contain, we want to share and accelerate the process, because at the end of the day, we're in this situation because, information is traveling so fast now that money has to travel at the same speed. And, you can buy something in 10 seconds or sign a deal in 10 minutes. And you have to wait with the old system 3 days to get a paper, because they used to send all these processes, but you need it in 10 minutes. Therefore, that means that it is a necessity to move towards, a faster way. And you cannot do it fencing. You have to open it up. That's the only way. That's the first part. And when it comes to challenging, what I think we're challenging from the system is, first thing, we believe that, the banking industry should be transparent, should be sustainable, and it should be based on fundamental truth. I think there's a lot of opacity in the financial economical industry to make people, not understand what is going on. Actually, a recent, analysis from OCDE in 26 countries tells us that more than 50% of the residents, I'm talking countries like Japan, Germany, European countries, and 50% actually cannot calculate interest rate. That's huge if you consider that this is the basics of money and how it's exchanged between people. They don't know that. So it's a very opaque system, and what our main difference is to make it transparent. That's also why we're showing, I'm sure you've seen it, all the processes from hiring, from what we teach our people, our agents, what they have to do. And we're showing everything, because that's the only way that people can see the truth. There's nothing to explain. We don't want to say, we are so sustainable because of X, or we are so whatever. We just show it and people will make their decisions. No? So that's why we're almost in a constant reality show in Onza, we show everything. Yeah. So from that standpoint, we are offering a different approach. We're offering a different partnership with the community. They can be members, owners of the platform, and as it says, community banking, meaning that's the community that is delivering the banking service. Mm-hmm. It's not a bank delivering a service for the community, and that's, I think, from, I would say, on a broad way to explain what we're doing here. Obviously, it will come down to detailed, application, just like commissions that are low, or no commissions, or fees that are fair, and all this transparency, and the way we build our platform, technological platform. Yeah.
That's incredible. And I think the saying is, it's easier to remember the truth, and being able to be that transparent means that you're not having to worry about the things. You can focus on the customer for your hub. And I think that's a really exciting perspective to hear from a financial services hub. It sounds like we're entering into, as you said, a new paradigm where the role of, I know you guys aren't a bank, but the banks are having to realize they can't make money by delaying a transfer. They have to do that instantly. And so it sounds like you've channeled that, and you've become a hub before the banks even know that they need to be one. Now, with that in mind, then, we've kind of been touching on it slightly, and it's something that's very close to my heart, and that's how Fintech is kind of opening up financial services so that everyone can get access to a certain type of financial service that maybe they were never privy to before. We're seeing, for instance, Klarna offering up credit to consumers that maybe would never have been trusted with it. Now, over the last 5 years, I've given an example, but to you, do you think over the last 5 years or so, fintech has been successful in opening up financial services, or is there still more that can be done?
Well, I think that we at just the beginning. I think fintech, they still trying to find themselves. As I said, they still have to understand that if you want to build a new model, it's important to understand the old model and what you want to change from that model, and you have to have a clear separation. While you are in between, which most of the fintechs right now are, they're just trying to be more performant, but the ideas behind and the way they're going to service that is still stuck to into the past. And I think that we're seeing some kind of, I would say, good changes we've seen that right now building our platform, because as you said, it is the most important for us from a technological standpoint. What we're building is almost a universal asset holder. It's not just about having a bank account with an IBAN. We're going to provide our community with a tool that will allow them to have in their hands, through the phone or computer, control over all their assets, being all sorts of assets, being shares, being gold if they want, being deposit, being their cash, being credit. As you've mentioned, the buy now, pay later is actually helping people to come in, so that, because it's all about liquidity. When it comes to helping people enter, increase people's financial, I would say, well-being, you have to raise two things at the same time. Knowledge, because the main hurdle is financial literacy. People don't actually understand what they're buying into, how they buy into things, what they could do. So the first thing is to channel all this information and break it down in a very simple way that a 10-year-old boy or girl can understand it. So that first they understand what we're talking about. Once they understand that, you can open up to them all the possibilities they have in front of them actually right now to manage their businesses, from deposits to credits to paying later to gold to cryptocurrency. We're bringing all that into one single place whereby you can manage all this with our help. We'll train you, we'll form you, we'll inform you, and then our agent will be next to you to go through each of these elements if you want to do so. So that's why it's easy for us to disclose everything, because we're not here to sell people to our customers. We are here to help them buy stuff. In this case, financial products. So I think that's the way to do it. And there are some examples. They come more from, I would say, social movement, or a specific community feels the need to pack together, which is the same we're doing here in Catalonia. Our ONZA is absolutely replicable. Once it's done, you can take it anywhere. As long as you find a community that share culture, ideas, or whatever, they can pack together and finance and be their own financial institution, at least to balance the power of the few, and bring it back to the many. So I think we're on the verge, but it's going to happen. There's no other way. It's a sharing paradigm. There's no other way. You cannot change it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We've seen so many instances recently. One that we mentioned before with the large-scale institutions moving out. Once you congregate in that kind of and become that force to be reckoned with, then the products start following suit. Then the other businesses start following suit, because there is that wealth, and that's absolutely exciting to hear. And another thing you touched on there is the financial literacy side of things. I feel like finance is the only industry where, even though there's people clamoring for the products, the traditional institutions that were offering these products weren't selling them. And people didn't know about them as a result, when in fact, if they were actually shown these products or learned about these products, they would have embarked on them earlier. So it's absolutely exciting to hear that. Now I've got to ask then, this sounds like a very exciting time for you guys at ONZA. So what is next?
Well, as I just said, we are trying, we see the next step. Right now, we've just launched the community base, which is a social network that brings the best of what you would have on Facebook, Netflix, Instagram or whatever, to make it, at least, as I said before, easy for people, because it's financial is like, it's boring generally. You know, we're trying to make it attractive, simple for people to actually learn. You know, we're investing a lot into that, because we think that's the basis to actually have a community that is more like aware of what's going on, so that they can actually choose properly. So that's what we have built. The second phase, which will launch in a couple of in a few weeks, I would say let's say maximum couple of months, is the financial application. And that's what I've explained before, which about this universal wallet, let's call it, that will allow people to transact, transfer, buy, share, and do whatever they want, but having the control, complete control, and almost immediate liquidity available, so that they can tackle whatever they need. That's key. And once we have done that, because we will do it for retail and small and mid-sized businesses, which, by the way, represent 90% of basically the GDP in Catalonia and 70% of the workforce. So this is everybody almost. So to these people, once we introduce the hub to them, we will then build a marketplace which will connect these people between themselves, to share services, product, whatever, throughout the hub, and generate a kind of circular economy whereby we are feeding the system ourselves, we're still producing, and at the same time, the top of the benefits that will come from that, in this interaction, will be also reinvested into the community, making it grow faster and healthier. So these are the 3 steps. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're pretty happy. We've launched like a month and 5 weeks ago. We're having like 98% engagement rate in the platform, and thousands already of Onze people in the community, and it's absolutely amazing, because we've done very little marketing around that. Actually, I think this was 1 day, I would say, when it comes to above the line. So we're pretty happy.
Incredible. It sounds like absolutely exciting times, and it's going to be brilliant to hear those SMEs that have been particularly maligned by the financial services industry before finally being serviced, especially with those numbers. It almost seems weird that they were left out. I know there was that risk, but that's being mitigated now. So James,
just before we cut on that, I mean, just what you said, so that you understand in terms of numbers what you've just said about here. You have 70% of the companies here, they're working or interacting with the big companies we call here IBEX 35, which are the top companies, and basically they are paid around 180 days working for these people, and legally you should maximum hold someone's money for 60 days. But at the same time, those big company, they own the banks that will, through factoring, give the money. They own these people in advance with a 5% discount, which meaning they financing them, and on top they taking 5% cut on that. If you consider that Catalonia is a 200 billion GDP region, that gives you an idea of the money that goes to very few in a very kind of I would say, let's call it weird way, not to say illegal. So this is the kind of things we can interrupt with by giving them access to quicker and better finance.
Amazing.
Precisely that,
yeah. I mean, making money off offering a worse service has got to be one of the most absurd things to think about in finance. But James, thank you so much for that enlightening talk. It was absolutely fascinating, changing the paradigm today here and hearing about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And also to all our viewers as well. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course YouTube and LinkedIn, where I'll see you in the comments. Guys, thank you so much and goodbye.